Jake Morrison pushed through the crowded hallways of Nexus Station, trying not to breathe too deeply. The air smelled like oil, sweat, and things he did not want to think about. His worn leather jacket hung loose on his thin frame, and his boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. He needed credits badly, and everyone knew the alien slave markets had the cheapest exotic goods in this part of space. His partner, Lisa Rodriguez, had warned him not to come here. She said the slave traders were dangerous, and the station's security was corrupt. But Jake was desperate. Their cargo ship needed repairs, and they had bills to pay. Sometimes a man had to take risks to survive in the Outer Rim territories. Jake walked past stalls selling all kinds of strange aliens. Some looked almost human, while others were so different he could not understand how they even lived. The sellers shouted prices and promises about their merchandise. Most of the aliens looked scared or sick. Jake felt sorry for them, but he could not save everyone. He was barely saving himself. At the far end of the market, Jake found a small stall run by a fat alien with purple skin and too many eyes. The creature wore expensive clothes, but his stall looked dirty and poorly maintained. Behind him sat several cages with different aliens inside. "Human customer," the alien seller said in broken Galactic standard. "You want exotic pet, yes? Have best creatures from Outer Rim systems." Jake looked at the cages without much interest. He had come here hoping to find rare spices or valuable minerals, not living creatures. But then he saw something that made him stop and stare. In the smallest cage sat what looked like the most miserable creature Jake had ever seen. It was about the size of a human, but covered in dull gray scales that looked sick and patchy. Creature had 4 thin arms and sat hunched over with its head down. Strange metal devices covered its eyes like some kind of crude cybernetic implants. "What is that one?" Jake asked, pointing at the sad creature. The seller's eyes lit up with greed. "Ah, very rare specimen from Corvani space. Blind, exotic, very docile. Perfect for wealthy collectors who want unusual display pieces. Creature makes interesting sounds like music." Jake moved closer to the cage. The creature lifted its head slightly, as if it could sense him nearby. Its scaled face looked almost human in shape, but the metal eye coverings made it look like some kind of torture victim. Jake could see small lights blinking on the devices. "How much?" Jake asked, though he was not sure why he was interested. "For you, special price." "Now 50,000 credits," the seller said with a smile that showed too many teeth. Jake almost laughed. 50,000? For a sick alien that can't even see? You must think I'm stupid." The seller's smile faded. "Creature's very rare. Last of its kind, perhaps. Worth much more to right buyer." Jake looked at the creature again. It seemed to be listening to their conversation, its head tilted slightly toward them. Something about its posture reminded Jake of a person trying to understand words in a foreign language. "I'll give you 500 credits, Jake said. "Take it or leave it." The seller made angry noises and waved his arms around. "Impossible. I paid more than that. You insult me." Jake started to walk away. He did not really need another mouth to feed on his ship, especially not some exotic pet. But something made him turn back. 1,000 credits, final offer, he said. "The creature looks half dead anyway. You'll be lucky to find anyone else willing to pay even that much." The seller looked at the caged creature, then back at Jake. After a long moment, he nodded. "Deal, but no returns. No complaints if creature dies." Jake transferred the credits from his account and watched as the seller opened the cage. The creature did not try to run or fight, just sat there quietly as the seller attached a chain to a collar around its neck. "Here," the seller said, handing Jake the chain. "Your new pet? May it bring you better luck than it brought me." Jake took the chain, feeling strange about leading another intelligent being around like an animal. But the creature followed him without resistance as he made his way back through the station toward his ship. The wanderer's dream was not much to look at, but it was home. Jake had bought the old cargo hauler years ago with money from his first big smuggling job. The ship was small, ugly, and constantly breaking down. But it could carry decent cargo and had enough firepower to discourage pirates. Lisa was waiting for him in the cargo bay when he arrived with his purchase. She took one look at the chained creature and put her hands on her hips. "Jake Morrison, what in the hell is that thing?" she demanded. Lisa Rodriguez was shorter than Jake, but twice as fierce. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her coveralls were stained with engine grease. She had been Jake's business partner for 3 years, and she never hesitated to tell him when he was being an idiot. "It's an exotic from the Outer Rim," Jake said, trying to sound like he knew what he was doing. "The seller said it might be valuable to collectors." "Looks like it's dying," Lisa said, walking around the creature to get a better look. "What are those things on its face? Some kind of implants, I think. Maybe they help it navigate since it's blind." The creature stood perfectly still during their conversation, but Jake noticed its head turning slightly to follow their voices. It was definitely listening to them. "How much did you pay for this thing?" Lisa asked. 1,000 credits, Jake said quietly. Lisa stared at him. 1,000 credits? "Jake, we barely have enough money for fuel, and you've spent 1,000 credits. "On some sick alien pet? I felt sorry for it," Jake said. "Besides, maybe we can sell it to someone who collects exotic creatures." Lisa shook her head but did not argue further. She knew Jake had a soft heart, even if he tried to hide it behind his tough exterior. "Fine," she said, "but it's your responsibility. I'm not cleaning up after it or feeding it or anything else. And if it dies, don't come crying to me." Jake nodded and led the creature to a small storage room that he could convert into temporary quarters. He removed the chain from its neck and was surprised when the creature immediately sat down in a corner as far from him as possible. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake said softly. Though he was not sure if the creature could understand him, he brought water and several different types of food, placing them near the creature before stepping back. The alien did not move toward the food or water, but Jake noticed its head turning slightly to track the sounds he made. Over the next few hours, Jake found himself checking on the creature regularly. It had not touched the food or water, and Jake began to worry that it might actually be dying. The metal devices over its eyes continued to blink with small lights, and sometimes the creature would make small sounds like it was in pain. That night, as Jake lay in his bunk listening to the ship's engines, he heard something that made him sit up. The creature was making soft, musical sounds, like it was humming a complex melody. The tune was unlike anything Jake had ever heard, beautiful and sad at the same time. Jake got up and walked quietly to the storage room. Through the partly open door, he could see the creature sitting in the same corner, its head tilted back. As it continued its strange song, for the first time since he had bought it, the alien seemed almost peaceful as Jake listened to the haunting melody. He began to wonder what kind of creature he had really purchased, and what story lay behind those mysterious metal implants that covered its eyes. Jake woke up the next morning to the sound of Lisa starting the ship's engines. They were leaving Nexus Station behind and heading to their next trading post. He grabbed a cup of coffee and went to check on his new purchase. The creature was still sitting in the same corner, but Jake noticed something different. The food bowl was empty, and the water container was half gone. At least it was eating, which meant it might survive the journey. "Good morning," Jake said softly as he entered the room. The creature's head turned toward his voice immediately. Jake could see its body tense up, like it was ready to defend itself or run away. But there was nowhere to go in the small storage room. Jake sat down on the floor across from the creature, keeping his distance. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "My name is Jake. I know you probably can't understand me, but I wanted you to know that." To his surprise, the creature made a soft sound that almost sounded like it was trying to copy his words. Jake leaned forward with interest. "Can you understand me?" he asked. The creature tilted its head to one side, listening carefully. Then it made another sound, clearer this time. It sounded like it was trying to say Jake, but the word came out wrong because of its different mouth and throat. Jake felt excitement building in his chest. This was not just some dumb animal. The creature was intelligent, maybe even trying to learn his language. "That's right," Jake said, pointing to himself. "Jake. I'm Jake." Over the next few hours, Jake tried teaching the creature simple words. It was slow work because the alien's vocal cords were different from humans, but it was definitely learning. By the end of the day, it could say Jake, water, food in ways that Jake could understand. But Jake was bothered by those metal devices over the creature's eyes. They continued to blink with small lights, and sometimes the creature would make small sounds of pain when they flashed brighter. Jake had worked with electronics for years, and something about the devices seemed wrong. That evening, Jake brought his toolkit to the storage room. The creature backed away when it saw the tools, but Jake spoke in a calm voice. "I think those things on your eyes are hurting you," he said. "I want to try to remove them, but only if you let me." The creature listened to his words, then slowly moved closer. Jake could see it was taking a big risk by trusting him. If he made a mistake with the electronic devices, he could hurt it badly. Jake examined the metal implants carefully. They were attached to the creature's skull with what looked like surgical bolts. Small wires ran from the devices down into the creature's nervous system. Jake had never seen anything like them before. The devices were definitely not helping the creature see. In fact, as Jake studied them more closely, he realized they were designed to cause pain. Small electrical currents were running through the wires directly into the creature's brain. Someone had built these things to torture this poor being. "This is going to hurt for a moment," Jake warned, "but then it should feel much better." Jake worked carefully with his smallest tools. The creature stayed perfectly still, even when Jake knew the removal process must be causing terrible pain. After an hour of delicate work, Jake managed to disconnect the first device. The moment it came free, the creature made a loud sound of relief. Jake could see its whole body relax as the constant pain stopped. The second device took another hour to remove. Finally, Jake pulled it away from the creature's face. What Jake saw underneath shocked him completely. Without the bulky metal devices, the creature's face was actually quite beautiful. Its features were elegant and refined, nothing like the sick appearance Jake had first seen. The scales on its face shimmered with soft colors that changed as Jake watched. But the biggest surprise came when the creature opened its eyes for the first time. "Thank you," it said in perfect Galactic standard, its voice clear and musical. Jake dropped his tools in surprise. "You can talk! You could talk this whole time!" The creature sat up straighter, and Jake could see it was not just intelligent, but also proud and dignified. "I am Princess Zethara of the Corvani Empire," she said. "I owe you a debt that I can never repay." Jake stared at her in shock. "Princess? But you were in a slave market?" "The seller said you were just some exotic pet from the Outer Rim." Zethara's expression became sad and angry at the same time. "My uncle Emperor Kozik murdered my parents and took control of our empire. He told our people that I died in the attack, but secretly he sold me to slave traders. Those devices you removed were designed to block my natural senses and cause constant pain, making it impossible for me to fight back or escape." "Natural senses?" Jake asked, confused. "But aren't you blind?" Zethara shook her head. "My people do not see light the way humans do. You sense energy patterns, sound waves, and electrical fields. Your people would call it echolocation, but it is much more complex. Those torture devices were blocking my ability to sense the world around me." As she spoke, Jake watched Zethara's scales continue to shift colors. Now that she was free from pain, he could see that she was actually quite beautiful in an alien way. Her forearms moved gracefully as she talked, and her voice had a musical quality that made him want to keep listening. "How long were you a slave?" Jake asked. 3 years, Zethara replied. "I was passed from one owner to another, each one thinking I was just a dumb animal. The pain devices made it impossible for me to show my intelligence or communicate properly." Jake felt sick thinking about what she had been through. Why didn't the seller know who you were? Surely a missing princess would be worth more than some exotic pet. "My uncle spread the story that I died in the palace attack. He showed burned remains that he claimed were mine. As far as most people know, Princess Zethara is dead. Only Kozik and his closest allies knew I was still alive." Lisa's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Jake, we're approaching the Kepler trading station. You might want to get ready for docking procedures." Jake looked at Zethara with new concern. "If your uncle thinks you're dead, what happens if word gets out that you're alive?" "He will send assassins to make sure I really die this time," Zethara said simply. "Kozik cannot risk having the true heir to the throne return to challenge his rule." Jake stood up and started pacing around the small room. This is bad. This is really bad. Lisa and I are just small-time traders. We don't get involved in alien politics or royal family problems. Zathara watched him pace with her strange alien eyes. I understand if you want to sell me to someone else or turn me over to authorities. You bought me as property, and technically that gives you the right to do whatever you want with me. Something in her voice made Jake stop pacing. Despite everything she had been through, Zathara spoke with dignity and acceptance. She was not begging him for help or making threats. She was simply stating facts. What would you do if I let you? Go free right now? Jake asked. I would try to find my loyal followers who are still hidden within the Corvani military, Zathara said. My people deserve better than Kazak's rule. He has turned our proud warrior culture into something ugly and corrupt, but I know the chances of success are small. I have no ship, no weapons, and no allies that I can contact safely. Jake looked at this alien princess sitting in his storage room. A few hours ago, he thought he had bought a sick pet. Now he discovered he was harboring one of the most wanted fugitives in Corvani space. The smart thing would be to drop her off at the next station and forget this ever happened. But Jake had never been very good at doing the smart thing. Tell me more about this uncle of yours, Jake said, sitting back down, and tell me about these loyal followers you mentioned. Zathara's eyes showed surprise and something that might have been hope. You are thinking of helping me? I'm thinking of learning more before I make any decisions, Jake said. I can tell you one thing right now. After what I've seen today, there's no way I'm turning you back over to slave traders. For the first time since he had removed the torture devices, Zathara smiled. It was a beautiful expression that made her alien features seem almost human. In that case, she said, let me tell you about the Corvani Empire, why my people deserve better than the monster who killed my family. Jake sat on the floor of the storage room listening to Princess Zathara tell her story. Her voice was soft but strong, and her scales changed colors as she spoke about different emotions. When she talked about her parents, the scales turned deep blue. When she mentioned her uncle Kozik, they shifted to angry red. The Corvani Empire has ruled our part of space for over 1,000 years, Zathara explained. We are a warrior people, but we also value honor and wisdom. A true Corvani leader must prove they can protect the weak and make fair decisions. What makes a good leader in your culture? Jake asked. Physical strength is important, but not the most important thing, Zathara said. A ruler must also show courage, intelligence, and the ability to sense truth from lies. My people believe that those who cannot see with their eyes often see more clearly with their hearts. Jake found this interesting. So being blind is actually considered a good thing? Not exactly, Zathara said with a sad smile. Many of my people still think blindness is a weakness. My uncle used this old prejudice to convince them that I could never be a strong ruler. He said the empire needed a leader who could see enemies coming. But you're not really blind, Jake pointed out. No, but most Corvani do not understand the difference. They see the empty eye sockets where other species have eyes, and they think I am helpless. Zathara's scales shimmered with frustration. Kozik used their ignorance to steal my throne. Jake heard footsteps in the hallway outside. A moment later, Lisa knocked on the door. Jake, we're docked at Kepler Station, she called. I need to talk to you about our cargo manifest. Coming, Jake replied. He looked at Zathara. Stay here. And stay quiet. I need to tell Lisa what's really going on. Jake found Lisa in the ship's small kitchen, drinking coffee and looking over shipping documents. When he sat down across from her, she looked up with a tired expression. Please tell me you're not about to make our lives more complicated, she said. I have good news and bad news, Jake said. The good news is that our new passenger is not some exotic pet. She's actually very intelligent and can speak perfect Galactic standard. Lisa raised one eyebrow. And the bad news? She's a fugitive? Alien princess whose uncle wants her dead? Lisa stared at him for a long moment. Then she put her head in her hands. Jake Morrison, I swear you are going to be the death of me. Do you realize what kind of trouble we could be in for harboring alien royalty? She was being tortured, Lisa. Those devices on her face were designed to cause constant pain and block her natural senses. I couldn't just leave her like that. Lisa, looked up at him. You removed the devices? Jake. You could have killed her if you made a mistake. But I didn't make a mistake, Jake said. And now she's free from pain for the first time in 3 years. Lisa was quiet for a moment, thinking, what does she want from us? Not sure yet. She says she has loyal followers hidden in the Corvani military, but she can't contact them safely. Her uncle thinks she's dead, and he wants to keep it that way. How much is she worth? Lisa asked. Jake looked surprised. What do you mean? I mean, if she's really a princess, there might be people willing to pay good money for information about her location. Maybe her uncle, maybe her supporters, maybe other alien governments. Lisa, we're not selling her out, Jake said firmly. Not saying we should, just trying to understand all our options. Lisa leaned back in her chair. Tell me more about this uncle of hers. Jake spent the next hour explaining everything Zathera had told him. Lisa listened without interrupting, but he could see her getting more interested as the story went on. This Emperor Kazakh killed her parents and took over the empire illegally, Lisa asked. That's what she says? And he's been ruling for 3 years, which means he's had time to make enemies and consolidate power. Probably, Jake agreed. Lisa tapped her fingers on the table, which she always did when she was thinking hard. You know, there might be money in this after all. It's not from selling her out, but from helping her. What do you mean? Think about it, Jake. If she really is the rightful ruler, and if she has supporters willing to fight for her, then backing the winning side in a civil war could be very profitable. Jake had not thought about it that way. You think we should help her try to get her throne back? I think we should learn more about the situation before we make any decisions, Lisa said. But if this Kazakh really is as bad as she says, then maybe the galaxy would be better off with her in charge. They were interrupted by a soft knock on the kitchen door. Zathera stood in the doorway, looking nervous but determined. I apologize for listening to your conversation, she said, but I wanted to make sure you were not planning to turn me over to station security. Lisa looked at the alien princess with new interest.
Oh.
Without the torture devices, Zathera looked completely different from the sick creature Jake had brought aboard. Her scales shimmered with natural colors, and she moved with grace and dignity. You're much prettier than Jake described, Lisa said with a slight smile. Zathera's scales showed a faint pink color that Jake guessed might be embarrassment. Thank you. I know I must look very strange to human eyes. Not strange, Lisa said. Just different. Have a seat and tell me about this plan of yours. Zathera sat down carefully, folding her forearms in her lap. Do you have a plan? But it is dangerous and requires help from people I have not seen in 3 years. Tell us about it, Jake said. There is a place in Corvani space called the Crystal Caves of Corvan, Zathera began. It is an ancient sacred site where our people have chosen rulers for thousands of years. According to our oldest laws, any member of the royal family can challenge for the throne by completing the trials in the caves. What kind of trials? Lisa asked. Tests of strength, wisdom, and leadership. The caves themselves are alive in a way connected to crystalline formations that can sense a person's true nature. They respond to courage, honor, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. Jake leaned forward with interest. So if you could get to these caves, you could legally challenge your uncle for the throne. Yes, but there are several problems, Zathera said. First, I would need to reach the caves, which are deep in Corvani space and heavily guarded. Second, I would need witnesses from the military and noble families to make the challenge official. Third, I would need to survive long enough to complete the trials. What about these loyal followers you mentioned? Lisa asked. Zathera's expression became more hopeful. Commander Vexthorn was my father's most trusted general. He helped train me in combat and strategy when I was young. If anyone would still be loyal to my family, it would be him. Where is he now? Jake asked. The last I knew, Kazakh had imprisoned him on charges of treason, but that was 3 years ago. He might be dead by now. Zathera's scales turned dark blue with sadness. Lisa and Jake exchanged glances. Jake could see his partner thinking through the possibilities. Let's say we wanted to help you, Lisa said carefully. What would you need from us? Transport to Corvani's space and help rescuing Commander Vex if he is still alive, Zathera said. I know it is much to ask. You would be risking your lives. For someone you barely know? What's in it for us? Lisa asked bluntly. Cythera smiled. If I succeed in reclaiming my throne, I would owe you both a debt that could never be fully repaid. The Corvani Empire controls valuable trade routes and mining rights. I could make you both very wealthy. And if you fail? Jake asked. Then we would probably all die together, Cythera said simply. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Jake. What do you think? Jake looked at Cythera, seeing the hope and determination in her strange alien features. He thought about the 3 years of torture she had endured, and the courage it must have taken to survive. He thought about the evil uncle who had murdered her family and stolen her birthright. I think, Jake said slowly, that sometimes a person has to do what's right, even when it's dangerous. Lisa sighed. I was afraid you were going to say that. She looked at Cythera. Princess, you just convinced 2 crazy humans to help you start a revolution. Cythera's scales glowed with bright, happy colors. Thank you, she said. Both of you. I will not forget this kindness. Don't thank us yet, Lisa said. We still have to figure out how to get into Corvani's space without getting killed. Find your general friend and somehow get you to these magic caves. One step at a time, Jake said. First, we need to learn more about the current situation in the Corvani Empire. Do you have any way to contact your supporters safely? Cythera nodded. There are old codes and communication methods that only my father's inner circle knew. If Commander Vex is still alive, I can reach him. And that's where we start, Jake. Said Lisa, can you plot a course toward Corvani's space? Already working on it, Lisa said, pulling up star charts on her tablet. But Jake, once we cross into their territory, there's no going back. Are you sure about this? Jake looked at Cythera. Again, seeing the gratitude and trust in her expression. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. 3 weeks later, Jake found himself crouched behind a pile of shipping containers on prison station Omega 7, wondering how his life had become so complicated. Beside him, Lisa checked her weapons one more time, while Cythera listened to radio chatter through a stolen communication device. 2 guards at the main entrance. For more patrolling the cell blocks, Cythera whispered. Commander Vex is being held in maximum security section C. This is insane, Lisa muttered. We're about to break into a Corvani military prison to rescue someone we've never met. Commander Vex trained me since I was a child, Cythera said. If anyone can help us reach the crystal caves, it is him. Jake adjusted his body armor and checked his plasma rifle. They had spent 2 weeks gathering information about the prison station and another week acquiring the weapons and equipment they needed. The plan was simple but dangerous. Get in, find the commander, get out, and try not to die in the process. Remember, Jake said, we stick to the plan. Cythera guides us using her enhanced senses. I handle any technical problems and Lisa covers our escape route. What if this Commander Vex doesn't want to be rescued? Lisa asked. What if 3 years in prison has broken him? And we improvise, Jake said. They moved through the shadows toward the station's maintenance entrance. Cythera had used her natural abilities to map the entire facility just by listening to sounds and sensing energy patterns. Jake was amazed by what she could do when she was not being tortured by those horrible devices. The maintenance door was locked with an electronic security system, but Jake had been breaking into things since he was a teenager. It took him less than 5 minutes to override the controls. Inside the prison station, the air smelled like recycled oxygen and fear. Jake could hear prisoners calling out from their cells as they moved through the corridors. Most of the inmates were Corvani, but there were also aliens from other species mixed in. This way, Cythera whispered, leading them down a narrow hallway. I can sense Vex's energy pattern. He's still alive, but very weak. They encountered their first guard at the junction of 2 corridors. The Corvani soldier was bigger than any of them, with thick armor and a powerful energy weapon, but he was not expecting an attack from behind. Jake stunned him with his rifle set to minimum power, while Lisa tied him up and dragged him into an empty room. They had agreed to avoid killing anyone if possible. Cythera said that unnecessary. Violence would make it harder to convince other Corvani that she would be a just ruler. Maximum Security Section C was heavily fortified with multiple locked doors and sensor systems. Jake worked on the electronic locks while Cythera listened for approaching guards. Her ability to sense sound and energy made her the perfect lookout. "Someone is coming," she whispered. 3 guards, moving fast. "Almost got it," Jake said, sweat dripping down his face as he worked on the complex security system. The footsteps grew louder. Lisa raised her weapon and prepared for a fight. Then Jake heard the lock click open. "Got it," he said. They rushed through the door just as the guards rounded the corner behind them. Lisa sealed the door with her plasma torch, buying them a few extra minutes before the guards could follow. "Commander." Vex's cell was at the end of a long hallway lined with maximum security holding areas. When they reached it, Jake saw why this. The section was so heavily guarded. Each cell contained prisoners who looked like they had been important people before their capture. The commander was sitting on a simple metal bench, staring at the wall. He was a large Corvani, with scarred scales and missing pieces of his armor where torture devices had been attached. When he heard their footsteps, he looked up with eyes that showed both hope and suspicion. "Who dares to disturb my peaceful imprisonment?" he asked in a voice that was tired but still strong. "An old student who has come to repay her debt to her teacher," Sethra said, stepping into the light where Vex could see her. The commander stared at her for a long moment, then his expression changed completely. "Princess Zethra," whispered, "but you are dead. I saw the burned remains myself." "Kazak's deception was thorough," Zethra said. "He sold me to slave traders and told everyone I had died in the palace attack." Vex stood up slowly, his body showing the damage that 3 years of imprisonment had caused. "My princess, I have failed you. Could not protect your parents, and I could not protect the empire from your uncle's corruption." "Shh, you failed no one," Zethra said firmly. "Kazak used treachery and murder to steal the throne. No honorable warrior could have prevented it." Jake heard explosions echoing through the station corridors. "We need to move," he said. "They're bringing in heavy weapons." To get through Lisa's barrier, Vex looked at Jake and Lisa with confusion. "Who are these humans, princess?" "Friends who saved my life and chose to help me reclaim my throne," Zethra said. "I will explain everything once we escape from here." Jake used his tools to break the electronic locks on Vex's cell. The commander stepped out slowly, testing his strength after years of confinement. "Can you fight?" Lisa asked him. "Give me a weapon and find out," Vex replied with a grim smile. Lisa handed him a spare plasma rifle. "Try not to shoot us by accident." The station's alarm systems were now blaring, and Jake could hear boots running through the corridors as security forces responded to the breakout. Their escape route was going to be much more difficult than their entry. "This way," Zethra said, leading them toward a different exit than the one they had used to enter. "There is a cargo loading dock that connects to the main shipping lanes." As they moved through the station, Jake noticed that other prisoners were taking advantage of the chaos to attempt their own escapes. Several cell blocks were now open, and aliens were running through the hallways in all directions. Princess Vex said as they ran, "How did you escape from the slave traders?" "Jake bought me in a market on Nexus Station," Zethra explained. "He thought I was an exotic pet, but he treated me with kindness and removed the torture devices that were blocking my senses." Vex looked at Jake with new respect. "You freed the rightful heir to the Corvani throne? I just helped someone who was being hurt," Jake said.
Ow.
"I didn't know she was a princess at the time." "The best acts of heroism are often done without thought of reward," Vex said. They reached the cargo loading dock just as a squad of prison guards caught up with them. Firefight was brief but intense. Jake was impressed by how well Commander Vex fought despite his years of imprisonment. The Corvani warrior moved with deadly precision, using his weapon to disable rather than kill his former colleagues. During the battle, Jake saw something that amazed him. Zethra used her enhanced senses to predict exactly where the guards would move before they moved. She called out warnings to her companions and guided their aim with perfect accuracy. "Behind the red container, 2 guards approaching from your left," she called to Lisa.
Jake.
"Energy blast coming from the upper platform," she warned him. Her blindness was not a weakness at all. In combat, it was actually an advantage that made her more effective than soldiers who relied only on sight. But then, disaster struck. A guard with a heavy energy cannon appeared on the loading dock's upper level. Jake saw the weapon charging up and realized it was aimed directly at Zethra. Without thinking, Jake threw himself in front of the princess just as the weapon fired. The energy blast hit him in the chest and sent him flying backward into a stack of cargo crates. Jake. Lisa screamed. Zethra dropped to her knees beside Jake's unconscious form. Her scales turned deep blue with grief and anger. No, she whispered. Not like this. Commander Vex took down the guard with the heavy weapon, while Lisa provided covering fire. But Jake was badly hurt, his chest burned and his breathing shallow. We need to get him to a medical facility, Zethra said, tears flowing down her scaled cheeks. The ship has basic medical equipment, Lisa said. If we can get him there fast enough. Vex picked up Jake's unconscious body. The loading dock has emergency escape pods. You can reach your ship that way. They made their escape. Zethra held Jake's hand and spoke to him softly. You saved my life again, she said. Now I must save yours. Later aboard the Wanderer's Dream, Jake lay unconscious in the ship's small medical bay. Zethra had not left his side for 3 days. Using her enhanced senses to monitor his vital signs and help Lisa operate the medical equipment. He is getting stronger, Zethra said, her scales showing hopeful green colors. His heartbeat is more steady now. Lisa looked exhausted from trying to save Jake's life. I'm not a doctor, Zethra. I don't know if what we're doing is enough. It has to be enough, Zethra said firmly. Jake risked his life for me. I will not let him die. Commander Vex entered the medical bay carrying a cup of tea for Zethra. Princess, you must rest. You have not slept since the rescue. Rest when Jake is safe, Zethra said. Vex sat down beside her. Tell me about this human who saved your life. I can see that he means much to you. Zethra's scales shifted to soft pink colors. Jake Morrison is the kindest person I have ever met. When he bought me from the slave market, he could have treated me like property. Instead, he treated me like a person who deserved respect and freedom. And now? Vex asked gently. Now I think I love him, Zethra said quietly. Is that foolish? He is human, and I am Corvani. We are different species from different worlds. 2 weeks later, Jake stood at the entrance to the crystal caves of Corvin, still feeling weak from his injuries but determined to help Zethra complete her mission. The caves were more beautiful than he had imagined, with walls covered in glowing crystals that pulsed with inner light. The air itself seemed to hum with ancient power. The crystals are alive, Zethra explained, her scales shimmering with nervous energy. They can sense thoughts and emotions. They will judge whether I am worthy to rule the Corvani Empire. Commander. Vex had spent the past week contacting loyal Corvani soldiers throughout the Empire. Word had spread quickly that Princess Zethra was alive and preparing to challenge Emperor Kha'Zix for the throne. Some warriors had already arrived at the caves to witness the trials, while others were fighting battles across Corvani space as civil war began. How many trials are there? Jake asked. 3, Vex replied. The trial of strength, the trial of wisdom, and the trial of sacrifice. Each one tests a different aspect of leadership. Many who attempt the trials do not survive. Lisa checked her weapons one more time. What about Kha'Zix? Any word on where he is? My spies report that he is bringing his personal fleet here, Vex said grimly. He knows that if Zethra completes the trial successfully, his reign will be over. He will try to stop her by force. Jake looked at Zethra with concern. Are you sure about this? Maybe we could find another way to challenge his rule. Zethra took Jake's hand in her 4 hands. This is the only way that will be accepted by all Corvani, if I become Empress. Through the ancient trials, no one can question my right to rule. Her scales showed determined purple colors. Besides, I have been preparing for this my entire life. They entered the caves together, following a path that glowed with soft crystal light. Other Corvani warriors followed behind them, including several military commanders who had remained loyal to Zethra's family. Jake was surprised to see how many people had risked their lives to support her claim to the throne. The first chamber was vast, the high ceiling covered in sparkling crystals. In the center of the room stood a simple altar made of black stone. As they approached, the crystals began to pulse more brightly, and Jake could hear a low humming sound. The trial of strength begins now, Vex announced formally. Princess Zathera must prove she can protect her people from any threat. The crystals flashed, and suddenly the chamber filled with holographic enemies. Jake saw images of alien invaders, rebel warriors, and dangerous creatures, all moving toward Zathera with deadly intent. But these were not just images. When Zathera drew her weapon and began fighting, Jake could see that the holograms could actually hurt her. This was a real combat test with real danger. Zathera moved through the battle like a deadly dance. Her blindness gave her advantages that Jake had never fully understood before. She could sense the exact position of every enemy, predict their movements, and strike with perfect accuracy. Her forearms allowed her to fight multiple opponents at once, while maintaining perfect balance. "Incredible," whispered one of the Corvani warriors watching from the sides. "I have never seen anyone fight like that." But the trial was not just about fighting skill. Jake noticed that some of the holographic enemies were designed to look like innocent civilians caught in the battle. Zathera had to make split-second decisions about who to fight and who to protect, showing that a true leader must be able to tell friend from enemy even in chaos. When the last holographic enemy fell, the crystals pulsed with bright light, and the humming sound grew louder. Zathera had passed the first trial. "Well done," Vex said with pride. Now comes the trial of wisdom. The second chamber was smaller, but filled with even more complex crystal formations. These crystals seemed to move and shift, creating patterns that hurt Jake's eyes to look at directly. "Princess Zathera must solve the puzzle of ruling," Vex explained. "She will be given difficult situations that an empress might face, and she must choose the best solution for her people." The crystals projected images into Zathera's mind, showing her various scenarios. Jake could not see what she was experiencing, but he could tell from her expressions that the choices were difficult and painful. Sometimes Zathera would speak aloud, explaining her decisions. "I would negotiate with the rebels rather than fight them, because a civil war would hurt innocent people. I would share our resources with the neighboring empire during their crisis, because helping others creates lasting friendships. Would punish the corrupt officials but give them a chance to make up for their crimes." Each answer caused the crystals to pulse with different colors. Jake realized they were measuring not just the wisdom of her choices, but the compassion and justice behind them. The final question seemed to be the hardest. Zathera stood silent. For a long time, her scales shifting through many different colors as she thought, "What is the most important quality for a ruler?" she finally asked aloud, as if speaking to the crystals themselves. The answer came to her in a flash of inspiration. "It's the willingness to sacrifice everything for the good of the people, even if it means giving up personal happiness." The crystals exploded with brilliant light. Jake knew she had passed the second trial. But before they could move to the third chamber, alarms began echoing through the caves. Commander Vex spoke urgently into his communication device. "Emperor Kazak's fleet has arrived," he announced. "They are landing troops outside the caves. We have maybe 10 minutes before they reach us." "The final trial," Zathera said urgently. "I must complete it now, or we will all die." They rushed to the third chamber, which was the most beautiful of all. The walls were covered with crystals of every color, and the air sparkled with energy. But Jake could also hear the sound of weapons fire echoing from the cave entrance. "The trial of sacrifice," Vex said quickly. This is the most dangerous trial, Princess. Many who attempt it never return."
Ow.
The crystals began to glow, and Jake felt a strange pulling sensation. Suddenly, he found himself separated from the others, standing in what looked like a perfect copy of his own ship's cargo bay. He could hear Zathera calling his name, but her voice sounded far away and distorted. Then he realized what was happening. The trial was not just testing Zathera, it was testing all of them. Through the crystal's power, Jake could see what was happening in the real chamber. Zathera was facing her greatest fear, a choice between claiming the throne and saving the people she loved. Kazak had arrived with his personal guard, and they had captured Lisa and several of the loyal Corvani warriors. "Choose Nice," Kazak said with an evil smile. "Claim your throne and watch your friends die, or surrender to me, and I will let them live." Jake could see the anguish on Zathera's face. This was the ultimate test of leadership. A good ruler must be willing to sacrifice anything for their people. But what if the sacrifice included the people they loved most? "I choose differently," Zathera said firmly. I choose to save everyone. She did something that no one expected. Instead of choosing between the throne and her friends, she used her enhanced senses to locate every person in the chamber, both friend and enemy. Then she began to sing. It was the same beautiful, haunting melody that Jake had first heard when he bought her from the slave market. But now the song was amplified by the power of the crystals, filling the entire cave system with its music. The song had a strange effect on everyone who heard it. Jake felt his anger and fear melting away, replaced by a sense of peace and understanding. He could see that even Kazakh soldiers were lowering their weapons, moved by the beauty of Zethra's voice. But the song did more than just calm emotions. It revealed truth. The crystals responded to Zethra's music by projecting images that showed Kazakh's crimes to everyone present. They saw him murdering Zethra's parents, selling Corvani citizens into slavery, and torturing innocent people for his own pleasure. No, Kazakh screamed, trying to break the spell of the song. I am the emperor. I have power.
Oh.
But power-based. On lies and fear could not stand against truth revealed by love. The crystals pulsed with final brilliant light. And Jake felt himself being pulled back to the real chamber. When his vision cleared, he saw Kazakh on his knees, surrounded by his own soldiers who now knew the truth about their emperor. Stood in the center of the chamber, glowing with crystal light, transformed by the completion of the trials. I arrest you for treason, murder, and crimes against the Corvani people, Commander Vex announced, placing restraints on the former emperor. The crystals continued to pulse with warm light, and Jake realized they were not just approving of Zethra's success. They were celebrating it. The caves themselves were happy to have a worthy ruler chosen at last. Empress Zethra, Vex said formally, kneeling before her. What are your first orders? Zethra looked around the chamber at all the faces watching her. Then she looked at Jake with love and gratitude in her eyes. My first order is to end the slave trade throughout Corvani space, she said. No being should ever suffer as I did. She paused, then continued. My second order is to establish new alliances with other species, beginning with humanity. We have much to learn from each other. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he realized what she was saying. She was not just talking about political alliances. She was talking about their future together.